Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Because I Have Thoughts. I'm Dr. T and we're still talking about identity. I'm thinking that this may be the last episode about identity. I don't know. My thoughts just keep going about this particular topic. Thank you all for continuing to watch and tune in. I hope that you have gained some information about your own identity, discovered new things about your identity, maybe solidified some thoughts that you already had about your identity. Either way, thank you for being on this journey with me and thank you for continuing to watch. So far we've talked about our biological identity and our family of origin and how they influence our identity. We also talked about our religious practices, faith, belief systems, and our culture and how those impact our identity. So today we're going to talk about how politics, pop culture, and society possibly influences our identity. We may not get through all of that today, which is why I said this may be the last episode. Maybe we'll have another. We'll see what all we get through today. But it's my intent to cover how politics, pop culture, and society impacts our identity. All right, are you guys ready to dive in? So this particular portion of the identity discussion is very near and dear to me. When I did my dissertation, I did a lot of research on the impact of social media, pop culture, the antiquated views of the Bible, and radical feminism, specifically on women. However, when you're doing research, you don't just look for information that may be impactful for your subject. You also do a broad scope of how that particular topic may impact or influence people in general, because you want to gather as much information as possible to do a thorough assessment of the impact of what you're discussing. So a lot of my focus was on the impact of social media and pop culture. So this part of the discussion of identity is, I'm very passionate about it. I mean, I spent an entire year doing research on how the impact of pop culture and social media affects women. So this particular portion of the discussion is very important to me, and we're just going to dive in. While I was doing my research, there was a realization that a lot of the women were not necessarily influenced by their own experience with social media and with pop culture and the antiquated views of the Bible and radical feminism, that some of that impact was from relatives, friends, their parents, their upbringing, that they weren't necessarily making conscious choices associated with pop culture, social media, and the antiquated views of the Bible and radical feminism, that there were outside influences, specifically their family members and their friends, that was causing them to look at those elements differently and possibly make decisions associated to those influences about their lives. So what it revealed was there was a reach beyond just the millennial women and millennial Christian women, that baby boomers were affected and Gen Xers were affected. I'm a Gen X. And how we were bringing that into the conversation, how we were raising our kids or teaching or leading in any capacity. All of those influences were being impacted and then trickled down, maybe directly or indirectly, to millennials. Which introduces the question and conversation about identity awareness. How do we establish our identity? Where does it come from? Is it ever evolving? Are there outside influences, which we've been talking about, but this is just another aspect of it, and how that is influencing who we are and who we decide to be, how we show up in the world, and how we participate in our community and in our immediate relationships. Do we know who we are? And do we have enough self-awareness about the messages that we're conveying through our identity? I don't think we do. I mean, since millennials are a product of baby boomers and Gen Xers, and I'm a Gen Xer, I don't think we set out, I'm going to speak for Gen X, not baby boomers. I don't think we set out to have this mass crisis of identity disorders where generations behind us are trying to figure out who they are confused about their identity, are not really sure about who they are. And then there's a lack of genuine identity overall. Like, if you turn on anything, if you look at any social media, the identity crisis that is happening amongst people is insane. So I recently had a conversation with a family member, and she was inquiring about my church preferences, like what church I was going to, what religious practice were they, or what denomination were they. And I was raised Apostolic Pentecostal, which I mentioned in the faith conversation about identity, which was in last episode. But there was like this root of judgment in the conversation as I began to convey the church that I was going to. The questions were like geared towards race, and not necessarily about like, was it a good service? What was the message about? Those are the kind of questions that I expect when the conversation is non-judgmental. But this conversation was layered and peppered with judgmental undertones without being direct. Technically it was an innocent inquiry. However, there were these implications about race, implications about is it a progressive church, those types of things with regards to the conversation. And I felt very, pressured to defend my choice to attend the church that I am attending. I'm laughing because at this point, the whole conversation I'm going through in my mind is hilarious to me. But and this particular family member is of the baby boomer generation and was raised in traditionalism and not necessarily biblically based foundations. And the conversation was rooted in some antiquated views of the Bible and misinterpreted passages of scripture. Those were the underlying undertones of the conversation. In that conversation, I felt slightly pressured to defend my choices, to defend the church that I am presently attending, which is not Apostolic Pentecostal. It's a non-denominational church. It's a Bible-based church. But I really hold no responsibility to this person to justify my choices in the church that I'm choosing to attend. Now, the lesser aware and lesser evolved version of myself would have normally responded inclined to the firing squad of questions that was coming my way. I may have even changed churches just to appease that person, to avoid having that conversation again. And while this person is well-intended, I'm sure that she was not aware that her part of the conversation was having such an impact on me and the way that it was having an impact on me. But her influence could have completely changed the trajectory of my faith. It could have changed the church that I was going to. That may have made me go find an Apostolic Pentecostal church just to appease her. I don't think we understand the gravity of our influence when we're having a conversation with someone, when we're engaging someone, and when we're sharing our thoughts and opinions. We have to be conscious about our influence and what we're influencing people to do, how we're influencing their decisions, and the great impact that we could possibly have on the trajectory of their lives. These overall antiquated biblical views and biblical practices have a heavy influence on not just on society, but on our politics, on social media, on how we operate with one another and engage one another in community. There's so much evidence of it. We can see the threads of the antiquated biblical views of influence intertwined in pop culture, in social media. there's an underlying message of influence adjacent to or even associated with the antiquated views of the Bible. One of the current trends on social media and within pop culture is the conversation around body positivity as it applies to identity. If you open up any app or any search engine, you will be shocked by the images that appear with regards to the level of nudity on social media, or if you just do an innocent search. I was working at a church a couple of years ago, and I was having a conversation with one of the lead pastors, and he was talking about expanding my particular department. And in that conversation, he was like, well, you know, social media is huge with the young people nowadays. Your department is, you know, heavy with the young people. Why don't we do something on social media? At that time, TikTok was huge. And I personally was not on TikTok at that time. I am on TikTok now, but I was not on TikTok at the time. And we were kind of moving from Snapchat into TikTok. And I think a lot of people still use Snapchat. I am not on Snapchat, but I am on TikTok. And the conversation he and I were having was possibly doing some promotion around social media with regards to recruitment for this particular program. And he was kind of encouraging me to start with social media. At that time, I had a Facebook page, and Instagram, and Twitter. I hardly ever go on Twitter, which is now X, but I had a pretty, I guess, prevalent presence on Instagram and on Facebook. I don't have like thousands of followers or anything like that, but I did at that time. I was posting pretty regularly. So I was like, oh yeah, I can start an Instagram page, I can start a Facebook group, and we can go from there. And he was like, oh no, I think maybe, what do you think about TikTok? I was heavily opposed to it. I was like, no, I don't want to be on TikTok. I hear about what things happen on TikTok, and it's just not my thing. I don't want to be on TikTok, and I'm on TikTok now. But anyway, but his response to me was like, yeah, I get it. He's like, I personally have opened up the app, and as soon as I open up the app, like I am bombarded with so many inappropriate messages. And it doesn't even matter like what you post. If you look at one thing, say you come across a music video and you like the song, but the song has the artist dancing in a questionable outfit or a revealing outfit. It may not be questionable for you based on your personal taste or whatever, but it may be a revealing outfit. Now, if you click on that video and you watch that video, now your feed is going to completely adjust your algorithm, and your feed is going to get other things that are associated with that particular song, that particular artist, that particular video. So now when you go back and you open up the app, you're going to be bombarded with images that you may not want to see. So I was like, no, I want no part of that. I don't ascribe to that. I have no interest. No, thank you. I mean, I eventually did start a TikTok. As I just said earlier, I am on TikTok. But think about that. I mean, we have Christians, faith-based people, believers, people who find their bodies to be sacred, consider their bodies to be a temple. And all they're trying to do is socialize with other people with the same mindset or the same belief system on a vehicle which supposedly promotes social interaction, but through technology. But instead, they are bombarded by messages that can be tempting to some people, can be challenging for people to be exposed to. For some people, it only takes one little image and they are doing a deep dive, and they are trapped in that app for hours looking at things that cause them to question their own identity, or stray away from their innate identity, or it just may be something that they're struggling with. What's crazy is that through social media, via pop culture, they have convinced us that body positivity is nudity, and it doesn't have to be. I was in a relationship, and the person that I was in a relationship with was like, "You dress too modest, it's boring." Like, why don't you spice it up a bit? And in my mind, I was like, use your imagination. Because I'm just not going to be displaying everything out on, to the world like that. I'm just not. But at hindsight, I can totally understand why he would have made that request or said that, because we are bombarded with images and messages that communicate that body positivity is nudity. Those two do not equate. I love my body, but that doesn't mean I want to show it off to the world. I honestly love my body. I love the body that God gave me. I love it with all of the flaws and quirks and everything wrong with it. I love my body. And I don't have to be nude or half naked to be secure in my identity of who I am and love the body that I have. There is a great podcast episode where they address this conversation with regards to body positivity, and that conversation around body positivity with the Perrys, with Preston Perry and Jackie Hill Perry. And on the show, they have a guest couple, which you guys know the husband is Ezekiel. I can't remember what his wife's name is. I apologize. But I would totally advise you all to watch that episode. But in that episode, they talk about the impact of the body positivity conversation within social media and pop culture, and its negative impact on marriage, relationships, identity, the whole nine. And I would strongly suggest anyone who is challenged in that area, or if you just want to hear more about the conversation, to watch that episode, because they really dive deep into the biblical principles that address the conversation with regards to body positivity. And I'm not saying that I didn't have a period where I was out there and doing it too, because I was, especially in my early 20s. Like, yes, mini skirts, crop tops, all of it. I was wearing all of it. I was doing all of it. And I don't want to make it sound like I'm opposed to it. I just want you to be doing it for the right reasons. And I just think that a conversation can be had. Like, are you doing it because you just love a crop top and you feel comfortable in it? Or are you doing it because right now it's just the in thing on social media to have your stomach out or to have your boobs out? Or if you're a guy, to be shirtless. I remember when my son was in high school and he was on cross country team, and the cross country team would run through the neighborhood. So I'm just driving through my neighborhood. My son is at cross country practice. So I'm just driving through my neighborhood, and I happened to see the team go by. And the team is predominantly white. I think my son and maybe one other young man were the only two Black children on the team. So, a whole bunch of shirtless white guys run by me, no thing. Then I see my son come by me and he's shirtless. And as a mom, I was unbelievably shocked. So I didn't say anything then. I don't even think he saw me, but I saw him. And I was just so taken aback by it. Like, oh my God, my son is running through the neighborhood shirtless. Like, what is happening? So I didn't say anything to him then. However, when he came home, the whole time I'm like, Lord, give me the words to say. I don't want to come across like as a prude. I don't want to make this a hard conversation. I don't want him to feel shame, because a lot of times body positivity is challenged when a person feels shame around their body. So I didn't want him to feel shame about his body. So I just asked him, I was like, so And my son, let me preface this by saying my son has, prior to this, was extremely conservative. Like, I'm talking about in the dead of summer, he would have an undershirt on under his t-shirt with regards to like the conversation of modesty. Like, it's 90 degrees outside and he would have like a wife beater undershirt or a t-shirt undershirt underneath another shirt during the summertime. So prior to this, that was his personality. I hope he doesn't hate me for telling this story. But so when he came home, you know, he came in, and when he came in, he was fully clothed. I mean, he's had his workout attire on, but he had a shirt on. So I just asked him, and not as soon as he walked in the door, but around the part of the evening, I was just like, so I saw the team today. You guys look good. Yeah, y'all. And he was like, oh yeah, we ran to the lake, then we ran to the park, then we ran back to the school. And I was like, oh, you guys do that often? And he was like, oh yeah. We work on pace. We try to catch the man in front of us. You know, he's using all of the cross country lingo. I don't remember any of this. This was years ago. And I don't remember any of the lingo because this was years ago. And, I just casually said, I was like, yeah, I noticed everyone had their shirt off. And he was like, oh yeah, we always run with our shirts off when it's really hot. And I was like, so y'all do it all the time? And he was like, yeah, like we get hot, so we just run with our shirts off. I said, do you start with your shirts off, or do you just take them off while you're running? He's like, oh no, we start with our shirts off. I didn't even know where to go in that conversation. Nevertheless, my son was completely comfortable with running with his shirt off around our neighborhood with the cross country team. Even at some meets, when I would come and watch him run, by the end he would have his shirt off after the meet was over. And I just watched how the popular opinion of the cross country team was to run with their shirts off influenced my son. And it's just that simple. It happens just that quickly. And sometimes we're not even aware of the influence of popular culture or popular opinion and majority rules. My son is still very conservative. I think that was just a phase. I mean, because we all go through periods of figuring out what our true identity is. I don't think you would catch him with his shirt off now. I'm not sure. He may surprise me. He may be running around the neighborhood shirtless, and I don't even know. But the point of that whole story is that he was influenced by popular opinion at that time, was that as a team, we all practice and run with our shirts off. And while I wanted my son to have body positivity, and I didn't want him to feel shame, I also wanted him to honor his body, and not necessarily putting it on display, because I don't feel like you have to put your body on display to honor it and have body positivity. And actually, the conversation of body positivity is literally just the tip of the iceberg when we think about the influence of pop culture and social media. I mean, the trends in pop culture and social media have caused divorce, they've caused debt and despair. You think about the impact social media has on and pop culture has on what we buy. Right now, like the biggest trend is having walk-in closets, and you're, converting an entire room of your house into a closet and then filling that room with clothes. Nobody has that many activities. Nobody has that many events. And I have been guilty of this. This is no shade to anybody. This is me having the realization in my own identity. Like, girl, you don't even go that many places to have that much clothing. So social media and popular culture has definitely impacted us to the point that people are in debt. I mean, I see so many people, I watch the news faithfully every morning. Well, I don't want to say every morning. Enough. After I have my quiet time, my Bible time, I work out, I usually watch the news. I'm a news head. I like watching the news. And if that ages me, I'm okay with that. But just so many people are financially in despair, and not necessarily just through inflation, because I feel like if you made better choices when the economy was okay, the inflation may not be having such a traumatic impact on you. And I don't want to sound insensitive, because I feel like we are all being impacted by inflation negatively. It is out of control. I remember when I started college, gas was like 90 something cents a gallon. And now I'm paying $4+ in gas. And that's just insane to me. I even had a conversation with my niece the other day. We were talking about car insurance and how expensive car insurance is right now. And I was telling her, yeah, when I started driving, my car insurance was $76. It is quadruple that right now. But I do think that there is some evidence to the fact that inflation is having such a detrimental impact on us and on society, because during the good times, we were so heavily influenced by the culture of acquiring things that we were not financially planning well. So the inflation is killing us. I mean, when you go all the way back to the housing bubble, I think the state of Florida had like $5 million, $10 million homes just completely vacated because the housing bubble blew up. That's evidence of popular culture influencing our decisions. You know, you can't afford a $5 million home. You don't even make $5 million. Like, what? And again, I am not being self-righteous. I'm not on a high horse. I have made financial mistakes based on the influence of popular culture. Right now, Coach is huge. Coach is making a comeback. Every time I open my TikTok, my Instagram, my Facebook, any of my social media, somebody is talking about the newest Coach bag and how I need to get it. No, I don't. No, I do not. I tell you, I have enough handbags to give some handbags away. So no, I do not need to buy another one just so I can be on trend. Nor am I going to buy another one to be on trend. I'm going to wear what I got. So I just wanted to have this conversation about how social media and pop culture impacts our identity, how it influences the decisions that we make, and that sends us into a negative state of being, whether it is divorce, whether it is debt, whether it is despair. And when I say despair, I mean emotional state. I mean, when we think about all of the school shootings have increased. Why? Because our kids are exposed to social media and they don't know how to deal with depression and the adult issues that come with social media. When my son was in high school, he was not allowed to have social media. He just was not. We didn't allow it. And he actually did not get his first smartphone until he turned 16. For his 16th birthday is when he got his first iPhone. I just feel like social media is an adult thing. Kids do not have the emotional intelligence, the emotional maturity to process all of the images and all of the messages that come through on social media. Heck, adults struggle with managing those messages. So why would you let your child be open to that? The amount of bullying that I see as a college professor with regards to social media, negative conversations around popular choices, gender, it's insane. So we need to be guarding our children against those messages and protecting them from the influence of social media and from pop culture. I mean, my research on the millennials and how it impacted them was mind-boggling to me. So I can't imagine the impact on, Gen Z now. So I guess I just wanted to share my thoughts on this conversation because as we see the uptick in identity disorders, we have to reevaluate our own identity and how our impact is influencing the people around us. And even some of the positive images and messages from social media and pop culture can cause a negative response. Case in point, I follow a lot of Christian influencers, Christian and just believers who have social media accounts, and they can be quite demonstrative, for lack of a better phrase, in their promotion of the Bible and biblical views. There's a lot of judgment, there's a lot of chastisement. And for me, if I wasn't a Christian, I don't know if those posts would make me want to be a Christian. Because one of the passages in the Bible talks about we've all fallen short from the glory of God. I recently had someone share with me about a leader that they had been working with. This leader had been mentoring them. They were very passionate about this leader and heavily influenced by this leader. And the person was like, she was like, I just found out that he's been cheating on his wife for like 6 years. She's like, how do you live a double life? How do you lie for 6 years? And I was like, yeah, that is an identity crisis. That is him trying to figure out his own identity in relation to his wife, his mistress, or whatever the scenario was. I also was thinking about that particular person that was sharing the story with me, their own identity, like your heaviest or your most influential person in your life just fell. What are you going to do now? How are you going to navigate your own identity, knowing that you were learning life skills and life practices from this particular person as it applies to your own identity? Two of the most popular conversations going around right now that are supposed to be positive messages is the idea of what a good woman and a good man is. Mostly the conversation is about a good woman because, of course, women are always being judged and scrutinized. It's a fun time. It's a fun thing to be a woman. But I recently saw a post about the Proverbs 31 woman, and I used to have a ministry called P31 where I was a huge advocate for the Proverbs 31 woman, which I still am. I just think that that passage is misinterpreted and weaponized against women on how they should be, how they should act. And it feeds into a lot of, and this is just not the passage itself, but the interpretation of the passage can be weaponized and can feed into a lot of stereotypes and archetypes that oppress women and can be challenging for women. And I'm not saying that the passage itself does that, because I truly believe in the passage. I love the example of the Proverbs 31 woman if it is interpreted well. But there is this huge conversation of the Proverbs 31 woman pretty much does three things. I'm sorry. She cooks, she cleans, she takes care of the kids. But there's so much more. There's so much more rich text in that passage that gets ignored and does not even come into the conversation, because that passage has been used to make sure women stay at home, cook, clean, and raise the children. And that's what I mean by like a positive message can also have negative influence. So you have women who just don't even cook well, and you like, well, you're not a good woman because you don't know how to cook. You have women who can't have babies at all, Are they not good women because their bodies can't biologically do it? I mean, I'm one of those women. My son is a miracle. I have had so many challenges in giving birth. If you followed me for a long time, you probably saw the piece that was published a couple of years ago by Literary Cleveland. I think it's still up on their website, in a project called Beauty for Ashes, where I share my story of my journey with multiple miscarriages, a stillborn. Are you saying that I am not a woman because my body can't physically do it, and can't have multiple children? So I think that's a component of identity where we need to have a real conversation with regards to judging women and holding them to a standard that they just can't do, period. And it's not even a healthy standard. To really understand that passage is to know that the Proverbs 31 woman was a very dynamic woman, and there were many aspects of her, and she was not completely defined by the fact that she cooked, cleaned, and had children. There was so much more to her. And I think you do a disservice to women when you quantify them or qualify them in a category that is so limited. At the end of the day, we're all subject to majority culture. We find significance and acceptance in community, and pop culture and social media kind of dictates what's acceptable and what's significant. And a lot of us make life decisions around the messages and the images that are offered through social media and pop culture. But that is a prime example of a positive message that's going around that could have a negative connotation for women who can't have babies, or women who can't cook, or aren't that great at cleaning. Those are all skills that have to be acquired and have to learn. I know couples where the husband cooks. Is the wife less of a woman because she is not a great cook? No, that's just not a gifting that God gave her. So I think we have to really consider the conversation of identity and how we are identifying ourselves. I think we need to take some time to get to know ourselves, separate from social media and pop culture and all of those outside influences that are causing you to have negative feelings, that are causing you to pick up negative habits that are not conducive to your overall growth, healing, and being the best version of yourself. I feel like I've talked so much and so long on just pop culture and social media that I may not get to politics today. I just want to be respectful of you all's time. I recognize that you have to be intentional to sit down and listen to someone for 20 minutes or longer. And I want to be respectful of the time and the fact that you guys tune in and watch or listen on Spotify, and I don't want to abuse that. So I appreciate that. I think that's all I'm going to talk about today. With regards to identity, I feel like I've said a lot. I have tons more stories to tell and some books, which I may just put the books in the episode description, about identity and how pop culture, social media influences our identity. Maybe I'll even put the link to my dissertation and you guys can read through that. If I can find it. It was so long ago, but if I can find it, maybe I'll put the link up so you can read my research about the influence of social media and pop culture. I also, again, touched on the antiquated views of the Bible and radical feminism as well. But it will give you some insight on discovering your own identity and how those things influence who we are, how we show up, how we participate in life, how we engage our community, and who we are in relationships. Well, that's all I got for you guys today on the identity conversation with regards to pop culture and social media. I hope that you maybe, go on a social media diet. I did for, I think it was 2 months earlier in the year. I did a social media diet. I would strongly advise it, especially if like you spend so much time on social media. And there's also that app now where you can monitor your usage of social media and how much time you're on your phone. Mine had gotten up to like 7 hours a day, and I'm not even like a huge social media person, but I do have some addictive personality qualities. So if I lay down one addiction, I tend to pick up another. And I have rotated through shopping and TV, social media. You know, those were my things. But I say, you know, fast from social media for a little bit and really stop and take inventory of yourself and the decisions that you're making, and are they being influenced by pop culture and social media? When you're getting ready to buy something, stop, ask yourself a question. Am I buying this because I really like this and I really want this? Or am I buying this because I just saw it on social media and I feel like I need it in my life? When you probably don't. Need is a strong. I used to be in a relationship with somebody that would tell me all the time, need and want are two different things, because I was a huge person. I'd be like, I need it. And they would be like, no, you don't. You want it. And do you know the difference? And I've learned the difference between what I actually need and what I want, and to use those words correctly. And I am not saying that I am completely delivered from the outside influences of my life, because it's an ongoing journey. Identity is an ongoing journey. We are ever evolving, ever changing. We become new people every year as we learn and grow and change and take in new information. We find new discoveries. I'm just saying to stay in touch with your most innate self, your most genuine self on that journey. It's okay to learn new things, but changing your identity to accommodate something new is a different conversation. And then losing who you are because of that change is another conversation. So consider that the next time you're scrolling on social media, or the next time you're getting ready to make a life decision where you're like, oh, I just want to live in that neighborhood because I saw those people and on that one show, and this just looks just like their neighborhood. But do you really want that? Does that really work for you? I'm just saying, ask the questions. Ask the questions before you make the decisions. That's all I'm saying. All right, y'all. I've taken enough of your time. I do want to say, please head over to my website. I have some services on there that I think would benefit some of you all. Some of you all know that I worked in media for quite some time. I did public relations, I did journalism, I was a features editor for quite a while. So if you are looking to have something edited, I do a lot of editing. I do editing professionally for people who are writing their dissertations. If that's a service that you think you may need, head over to my website, click the inquiry button, and then scroll down, fill out the inquiry form, and I will reply. I also do business development. I've helped a lot of women get started with their business, whether it's trying to get an LLC, whether it's writing their business plan. I do a lot of that. So head over to my website, again, click the service tab, and then fill out the inquiry form. But just, go to the website, peruse a little bit. I do a lot of services, and I may be able to help you on your journey of identity. Maybe you had a business that you want to build and you just don't know where to get started, and that's a part of your identity. I can help you with that. Also, the personality assessments are still up there if you want to check those out. Again, some of those are free, some of them cost some money. I think it's a great way to get in touch with your most genuine self. You can learn some things about yourself through personality assessments, so check those out. Again, thank you for tuning in. Please like, follow, and subscribe, and share the video with somebody. I would truly appreciate that. Last episode did great with the numbers. GoDaddy and YouTube were really happy with me, so I'm really happy. When they're happy, I'm happy. So thank you for tuning in. I hope that you will continue to tune in and subscribe. I mean, you ain't gotta have the notifications on so you irritated every time they come, but subscribe. I would appreciate that. So like, follow, subscribe, share the video with somebody. And as always, you all know that I believe that time is the rarest commodity that we have. So I thank you for spending some of your time with me. I'm Dr. T, and this has been another episode of Because I Have Thoughts. Thank you for listening to my thoughts. Bye.